Welcome to the K-State Insiders, your Kansas State sports show. Now, let's head into the studio.
Welcome to our Monday night practice of going live for K-State fans around the world. Tim Fitzgerald, Ryan Gilbert, Cole Carmody, Brien Hanley, the whole crew's here. We're awaiting our guest still. Hopefully he'll find his way into the room. Till then, you got a very boring studio cam. Neither dog is in view, which is the whole purpose of the Cats and Dogs studio cam. But it does look like we have a toy in the corner. Very exciting for everyone at home. Guys, how we doing? We haven't done a show after a victory in a while. Do we get to be like positive this week,
Yes.
Gills? Is that I only got to be positive like 3 weeks this season. It's so hard.
I mean, I think we can be positive because they won the game and they didn't play well. I think that's the thing to be positive. Usually when they don't play well, they lose. Like neither team played great, but they did enough to win the basketball game. It was, I don't know. Neither team could shoot it. Neither team could score, but Colorado turned the ball over, like they were trying to save their life with turnovers. And so that's kind of the difference in the basketball game, but you got to give Kansas State some credit for that. By playing some good defense. Anytime you keep a team under 60 points, that's something. I don't care who it is. You're doing something. So I think we can be positive about that. And also frustrated knowing you win a game by 9 points. I'm not saying Colorado's great, but you win a game by 9 points. Your quote unquote best player or second best player, whatever, is not out there. And you didn't play well. What could it have been? I think that's why people get frustrated. I know my man Cole echoes that because he talks about it all the time. It's like, what could this have been if we got it together, man? I don't know. It's just frustrating. That's all.
Agree. Gills, K-State was up double digits, 17 points in that second half. If that game had gone on a couple more minutes, I would have been a little worried about the Cats. They were fading fast. And Colorado started to play with urgency, something it hadn't done the entire game, but K-State was too good because Colorado sucks. That's my in-depth analysis of that game.
Colorado is respectable, Fitz. Big B, you can back me up. Over the last month,
I would take them to church.
Respectable basketball
with them.
No, Colorado, first of all, Colorado's very well coached.
They are.
That's the one thing. They got an outstanding coach. They haven't quit on a game, and Gills is right. The last, I wouldn't say month, but over the last 3 weeks, they played much better basketball, much better.
Yeah, but Doug McDaniel mentioned it post-game that they kind of let their foot off the gas a little bit. And on my film study, I said kind of the play of the game, there was about less than 3 minutes left, and K-State was only up by 8. And you like you mentioned, Fitz, you could kind of feel the momentum was shifting to Colorado, and Buddy Rich just kind of got his hand on a rebound and got it to David Gasson, and Gasson got fouled and then hit a couple free throws. K-State goes up double digits. That's kind of your ball game right there. But if K-State doesn't score, it just kind of felt like Colorado was going to score and cut it to a 2-possession game. So, yeah, I know Drum Tank said in the past there's certain games that if it had just gone on a little bit longer, they win. This was the opposite here. I think K-State was fortunate. This was just a 40-minute battle, not a 45, 50-minute game.
Cole, they got it done. And as Big B said, it wasn't necessarily pretty, but good heavens, did this team need this victory? And maybe that will impact them in a positive way when they go to Cincinnati on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I think that this was the kind of game where if you were like me and you were watching the men and the women at the same time, you could maybe turn your attention to the women's a little bit more because the men, every time you looked over, were doing what they were supposed to be doing. And there were several guys that stuck out to me. Obviously, David Gasson is the headliner here. He's playing like a guy who knows that his days are numbered. And his days, let it be known, his days are not numbered for basketball. He is going to play professional basketball. I've seen some people mention that because of the things he does, they think he might have a chance to get into the summer league this year. The NBA Summer League. I don't necessarily know if I agree with that, considering he's not a very good shooter. But either way, he's going to play professional basketball in Europe because he really is a skilled basketball player. And so But he's playing incredibly hard, and he's leading the way with those guys. But I don't know about you guys. I was pretty impressed with Brendan Haas's performance. The way that he's able to come across those, come off those screens, he's starting to kind of transition into less of a deep sniper only shooter into more of a well-rounded basketball player. And if you're a fan who's watching this team and looking for positives, seeing Brendan Haason become a 2-level scorer as opposed to a 1-level scorer, I think is really important for this team. If he can develop any kind of mid-range, then it's going to really help this team moving forward. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things to look at that game. And several times, guys, I don't know if you guys noticed this, there were times without a senior on the court. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it did kind of make me pause, because I think that the coaching staff starting to realize that they not only are still trying to win, but they're trying to figure out who they want to have on this roster next year.
Agreed. Yesterday's DD, or today's actually, was on Coleman Hawkins. Cole, do you know who the first and second leading scorer are on this team this season?
I'm going to say Coleman Hawkins and Doug McDaniel.
You're wrong on both. The two leading scorers as of now are David Gasson and Brendan Haason. Gotcha, Gills. That's a great. I was stunned by it, actually. I knew Gasson had gotten his numbers up there, but to see Haason second really caught me off guard, to be real honest. But he puts it up when he needs to, and you're right. Now that he's taken it to the hole and become a threat, that's going to help him out quite a bit. Let's turn to Gasson, though. He is tomorrow's topic on the daily delivery. Big B, I don't even want to think, and this is what I say in the daily delivery, where this team would be without David Gasson, because that kid plays his ass off.
Yes, he does. And we've talked about it several times, and I don't get tired of talking about it, to be honest with you. For him to be able to transfer or conform his ability from what he was when he got to Kansas State to what he is now, I think is something to talk about, because he's not the most talented basketball player. He gets what he gets on effort. And if we're being honest, how many plays do K-State run for him? Like how many sets does K-State say, you know what, we're going to give David Gasson the basketball and just let him go to work? I think that answer would be zero. They don't do that. He gets everything that he gets off of, okay, the ball may come to me and he makes a play. I go, but it's all effort, man. And that's all you're asking for guys to stick around and work as extremely hard as he has worked. And it's gratifying to see it pay off in this way, because usually guys that are like David Gasson end up their last year averaging like 6 points a game and 3 rebounds. And they may play a lot of minutes, but they're just not talented enough to do anything. Well, he's worked so hard. He's made himself more talented. How often does that happen? Does somebody make themselves more talented or more valuable to a team? I'm not saying he's the most talented guy on the team, but he's just made himself better as a basketball player, man. That means something. And I just wish more people, not just him and on this team, just everywhere, if they had that. Heck, myself had that kind of work ethic to just make yourself just get every ounce of whatever you're trying to put into something, get every ounce of that, because if he continues to do that for the rest of his life, the guy's going to be ultra successful.
And I want to jump in on this and echo that, because I'm looking at his stats right now, and sure, his points have gone up by almost 5 points a game, nearly. Minutes are around the same. But the one stat that stands out to me that, you know, you wouldn't maybe necessarily think that this stat shows how much better and how much work a player's put in. But here was his free throw percentage all of his entire collegiate career: 41% and 53% at Virginia Tech. And then he was 46% and 41% last year at Kansas State. He's gotten that all the way up to 59%. That's an 18% increase in free throws. And while you may sit there and say he's not that good of a free throw shooter, I'm not going to argue with you on that. But for him to work his butt off and get to the point to where he is now, that to me tells me all I need to know about David Gasson, both as a basketball player and as a person, because that is not an easy thing to do.
He shot 62.4% from the field this season.
Right.
He's shooting better from the field because he's so efficient around the rim. But Gills, you're right. how do I say this without sounding like I'm being critical? He has a kind of a small pocket into which he can fit as a player, and he does a great job of existing in there as a mobile post who might have defensive deficiencies, but plays his ass off and knows how to score around the rim like nobody's business. He's very, very efficient.
Yeah, he's almost like a point guard in the sense of just he has a feel for where he is in the paint, and he always just finds the easy points. And I'm not sure if there's anything else I can add in terms of what he brings on the court, because you guys touched on it. I agree with 100% everything y'all said, but go back to the non-conference with a team full of newcomers that had to gel together. Guys, just imagine how much, I don't want to say uglier, but how much tougher it would have been without Gasson in that locker room. I mean, just think about the presence in the practice facility, in the weight room, wherever it may be. That's where Gasson, I think, is mostly underappreciated. He's just been obviously a nice representative of this university, but in that locker room, man, there was one guy, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, that Jerome Tang was outspoken about keeping that could come back from last season. That's David Gasson.
Yep, for good reason. As we continue the David Gasson worship here on the K-State Insiders, he's exactly as Jerome Tang and his coaches pivot how they're going to try to construct the roster and be a little less reliant on the transfer portal. That's not going to be their bread and butter. Coach Tang said it after the game, Brian. He wants more guys like this, guys that have been in the program for 3 years and become really good after 3 years, because he arrived at K-State as a total afterthought, 6'9" athlete who was kind of in between positions, averaging about 3.5 points and 2.5 rebounds in 2 seasons at Virginia Tech. Not much was expected, but he went to work and he got it done. And you know what? That's the K-State way. You find the guy with the upside and you put him to work. And that's what Gasson did. And now they're going to look for more guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously you don't want to have a roster full of guys like that, but to have 3 or 4 guys that work their ass off, absolutely. You need that. Not just you necessarily want that. You need that to be the norm of your program. Now, it becomes even better, and your program is really, really good when the best player on your team has that kind of work ethic. Then everybody really has to fall in line, and that's maybe, I think, and look, I'll be the person to say it, I think that's probably what happened early in the season. Look, David Gasson, not necessarily the most talented guy, but he's the hardest worker. People weren't necessarily following that. Okay, great. Well, then you look at how it got started, and then you're like, well, maybe we should take some of his lead. Maybe we should follow what he's doing, because if we give that effort with the talent that we have, maybe the season will get better. Well, lo and behold, they go and win 6 straight games. And to most people that watch college basketball, at one point, K-State's the hottest team in the country with the wins that they had rolled off. I mean, it's just that simple. Well, and I mean, things fell apart because kind of like a basketball game, guys, is you get down by 17 points, 18 points. You use everything you have to get back into the game and maybe even take a lead, but then you have nothing left down the stretch and you lose the game by 7, something like that. I kind of feel like that's how this season went, is that they used everything they possibly could to get back to respectability, and then they just didn't have anything left. That trip to Utah was just the death nail. But it is what it is. But yeah, I look forward to what Coach Tang is going to do in this offseason, Fitz, as far as putting together a basketball team. Because we've talked about it, and I've said it, and I'll continue to say it. You got a collection of individual players, but you got to have a team. You got to put together a team when you're getting those individual players. And I don't know, they went away from that this year, maybe in a panic mode. I don't know. Got caught up in the NIL thing. Look, you can use NIL to your advantage. You absolutely could. You can. And teams do. But you still have to build a team, and the ways of just getting players doesn't work. I mean, you look at it, Kentucky, when Calipari was there, they had the best players in the country. Now, they were all young, but they were getting the top guys, and they couldn't get out of the second week or the second round of the tournament the last 6 years. They just couldn't get it, couldn't win, just couldn't. Well, Guys aren't experienced. They don't know how to handle it. You got a collection of talent, but not a team. I'm looking forward to K-State getting back to that.
Fitz, do we have any specific agenda when it comes to basketball tonight? Because I want to bring something up. Can we talk about the handling of Buddy Rich, a.k.a. Wabash Station's favorite Kansas State basketball player?
I think a lot of fans like Buddy. I like Buddy.
I do too. I am absolutely, totally fascinated by this. And the facts are the facts. He didn't play in what? Gilbert, you help me out with this. 13 straight games, something like that?
Yeah, Oklahoma State and Stillwater was last time.
And he was on the court when the final buzzer sounded on Saturday. And I understand that part of that is because, maybe all of it, is because Coleman Hawkins and Moby Ike Garuka were both out. And I get that. But you can't convince me that a guy being on the court when the final buzzer sounds in a less than a non-blowout game, that there isn't at least a little bit of trust there. And all conspiracy theories of Buddy Rich has, unofficially entered the transfer portal, and Buddy Rich has given up on the team. And I was willing to entertain those. I was. But knowing what I know about Jerome Tang and knowing what I know about how he handles his basketball teams, I don't doubt that if Buddy Rich had told the staff he was going to transfer, that he would still be playing, because I think they needed him to play. But I don't think that he'd be as much of a contributor as he was the last two games. And maybe I'm totally wrong on that. But I want to know your guys' thoughts on this, because to me, it's fascinating. I still don't think he's coming back. But the fact that, what do you want to say, Jerome Tang swallowed his pride? I don't know. And is playing him. It's just interesting.
Gilles, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say you are not going to see the court if you're not locked in being a valuable asset in practice, right? So over the last X number of weeks, Buddy Rich clearly, regardless of what the future may hold and regardless of what happened in the past, right? Buddy Rich clearly, Jerome Tang mentioned, and I thought it was total BS in a press conference about a week or two ago, Kellis Robinette asked him about Buddy Rich and said that he has been a positive in practice, but there's just only 200 minutes per game to dish out. And so I think Tang, obviously we've seen Rich play a lot recently. So that's what I'll say, is that he's been, locked in practice, and he's been a hard worker in that regard. And what happens in the future, what happened in the past, over the last X number of weeks, Buddy Rich has been locked in. I wasn't expecting him to play again this season, but I thought it was interesting. Did you guys hear Tang and the presser said that Buddy wasn't giving? That's why Taj, I think, is why he said Taj on the court. So that was interesting. Yeah. So the fact that Rich wasn't benched for the whole game and came back, that was okay. I see the comment here. Yeah, that was really interesting. I'm still kind of puzzled, because usually the Jerome Tang way, right, is if you're not giving your all, you're out for the game, right? But clearly, I think he showed some trust in Rich to say, "Hey, get back out there, fight harder."
I mean, my thing is, look, if you're not giving effort, and regardless if you trust him, I mean, if the guy said that he's wanting to transfer, you're not going to get all the effort that you're looking for anyway. That's just human nature. It's my opinion. Look, you can keep the guy on the team. You can let him practice. You can do whatever. I'm not putting that kid in another game. That's just me. Now, you could say, well, we had guys hurt and we're still trying to win. If a guy's not invested enough and he's already told you he plans on leaving, play somebody else. Do something different. I get it, but I don't know. I just wouldn't be – it couldn't be me. I couldn't put a guy on the court to represent the school that I know doesn't want to represent the school and this basketball team. That's just my personal opinion. Now, call me old-fashioned if you want. Fine, I'll wear that hat. But if you're – and I'm not blaming him for wanting to transfer, by the way. I'm not – you mean anybody should transfer who wants to transfer by all means. So I don't blame him for that. I'm almost blaming Tang more for why are you putting a kid out there that doesn't even want to be there anymore. So that's just me. That's just, I wouldn't have done it, but you're right. Maybe he swallowed his pride and thought, well, they're one of the better play. I got to get him out there. Got to get him minutes, but it just couldn't have been me.
I disagree to an extent, Big B. In pro sports, you've got guys on their final year of their contracts, right? And like, our Najee Harris, we all know he's not coming back, right? But I'm sure he locked in and gave it his all, even towards the end of that season. And, this is something I mentioned, I think, on our podcast, Fitz, we did last week. Like, Ish Masood is a great example of, I think, knowing a guy is going to be leaving, but still, Cole, you mentioned Buddy Rich being on the court when the final buzzer sounded. Go back to the Elite Eight against FAU, who was on the court when the final buzzer sounded, right? Ish Masood was there. So I disagree just in that regard, Big B, and maybe your opinion. I'm not, that's your opinion. I'm not going to disagree with that. But Tang has, if you're gonna lock in and show that you are gonna fight, Tang has proven that he's gonna get those guys minutes.
And here's my thing on this. I don't disagree with you about Ish, but like that team was in the Elite Eight. Like they had a chance to win a national championship. Kansas State's fighting to make the college basketball crown. Like, like if he's not going to come back, then like Big B said, don't play his ass. Like I struggle with it. And again, it's just conspiracy theories at this point. Maybe we'll never know. But also there's that other possibility that, maybe he has been very receptive to that kind of coaching because everybody thought he was going to leave last year when the same type of thing happened. Maybe he's starting to do some maturing. And I think sometimes, people on Twitter and wherever get very angry with the fact that Jerome Tang talks about helping these guys get adjusted to becoming men. And maybe that's part of this because the way that Buddy Rich obviously was these past 2 years, he was not mature enough to handle what was ever being thrown at him because otherwise he would have played. And so maybe that maturing process has taken place and maybe Buddy has seen it. We'll never know. We won't know until the season's over, but it is just fascinating that, and essentially, I don't want to call it a lost season yet because they have won 6 games in a row, and I'm sure the coaching staff is holding out hope that can continue, that could happen in Kansas City. But in essentially a season that has been a disappointment, instead of just giving up on a player, they're playing him at the very end of the year, which is just odd. It's just odd.
Here's what I believe has happened. This is a young man who hasn't consistently put in the effort, put in the time, put in the commitment, has shown up in practice, not ready to go, didn't go full speed at times in practice. You can't play him. And despite your talent, you got to be elite to get away with that crap.
Yeah.
Even Doug McDaniel wasn't. He's fairly elite. And they just weren't they weren't putting up with it, and they kept pushing Buddy to the point where he announced, well, I'm going to leave. Because he basically said, I'm leaving because I'm not going to put in the work. Well, you're not going to play then. You're not. And then Jerome Tang mentioned it. They started seeing the effort. I think finally Buddy said, well, if I'm going to be here, I might as well log some effort here at practice and try to get on the court because right now I don't have any film. So I kind of agree with Gills' thing. I think he woke up and said, I'm in the last year of my contract. I better show something here or nobody's going to give me a new one. And, of course, that just means transfer portal and find a new home. But I did think it was interesting, though. After giving him an opportunity these last 2 games, he called him out, said he wasn't giving the effort. So I stuck Taj in. And, Lord, Taj Manning is a great teammate. He just keeps working and gets on the court. His dad is fully invested. One of the things I love about going to 15 scholarships in men's basketball next season for Kansas State is there's plenty of room for Taj Manning.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to look at that as a squandered spot because it isn't. When he's contributing at the level he does at practice and other ways, I think they view him as a valuable asset, even though you and I and the fans in the stands don't see that in a game.
Yeah, it's like what I said with David Gasson and being a locker room positive. Absolutely, same thing could be said for Taj Manning. Even though he doesn't see the court much, that's still a guy that's going to show the newcomers kind of the ropes, right? So, yeah. I mean, Taj, it was 4 minutes, right? But I mean, Tang mentioned he was tired when he had to come out, but he gave his 110% effort in the game.
And I know we don't necessarily talk about recruiting on this podcast, but I think this is a question that Andrew asked that is probably worth bringing up. Yep. Is the staff focused on high school recruiting? There is no incoming freshmen that are committed. He says kind of concerning, but I think it's pretty obvious that, they're trying to change that. There was 2 kids in town on official visits, and from the sounds of it, the looks of it, it sounded promising. So I think this staff is starting to realize that, the development portion is okay. You have to go out and get dudes, as Brien, you've talked about that before. Go for those big name guys, but supplementing your roster with high school players, supplementing your roster, that doesn't necessarily have to be dudes right out of high school that are going to come in and play the minutes that are not necessarily the guys who are, let's be honest here, you're going to have to spend a lot of NIL money on. That's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. And so I think they're starting to realize that, and it wouldn't shock me if, not this 25 cycle, but in the 26 cycle, Ryan, you can probably speak to this better than I can, that they might try and amend their strategy from last year a little bit.
Yeah, they're going to have to. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I had someone tell me something really interesting the other day. Someone in the basketball coaching circles, that there's been a slowdown on recruiting high school players right now until the portal opens and people see what's in it, what's available. Is there an answer in there? Or do I go ahead and use this roster spot for a high school kid? So I think this is an interesting dynamic with the portal now. Seems to be having some pressure on the actual recruiting process, because so many coaches are like, Rick Pitino just said it the other day, I'm not recruiting high school anymore. Why? I can go to the portal and get people with experience that have already proven what they are at this level, and as opposed to signing a kid, because he's been around this game to know damn well that a kid might be 4 stars and might play like a 5-star, or he might end up at college as a 2-star.
Mm-hmm.
So you just got to be careful with that, and I think coaches are being careful with that. But they will be portal first, probably. K-State probably still will be. I just think they're going to continue to look for more developmental pieces and younger pieces that can be in the program for years to come, like David Gasson.
Yeah, I think they should. You got to get – I think the first part, when you go to the transfer portal, you're going to try to get guys that can be there for a couple of years. You don't want to just go out and get a bunch of one-year guys, because, again, you're going to be doing this every single year. That's kind of where getting the high school kid comes in. You cast a big net to try to get what you can in the transfer portal. But at the same time, basketball is so much different than football. People want to equate the two and think that they're the same, and they're not. Is that basketball, guys have been around for a couple of years. For instance, you get a point guard from a mid-major, they can play at the Big 12 level, and they can be just fine at the Big 12 level. Where in football, maybe you get a quarterback that's been good at the FCS level or even Group of 5. You bring them into Big 12, and they're seeing ghosts out there because guys are moving so much faster. Basketball is not that way. It's totally different. So when you look at the grand scheme of thing, I think K-State's still got to dig in the portal. I think they need to go get people in the portal, but they also need to still try to focus on high school. You got to do both. K-State's got to do both. But people shouldn't think that, because there is a second signing period, and that's kind of still of a major signing period in college basketball, where in football, the first signing period, if you're in the second one, it's a lot of times it's guys either maybe they were waiting on eligibility or couldn't make up their mind, or they flip-flopped or something like that, where in basketball, there's still a lot of high school guys that have not made a decision at this second go-around. So there's still really good basketball players that are going to be available in the high school ranks for K-State to get.
Agreed. Okay, let's switch things up here, both visually and also with our topics. There we go. Sorry, dogs. You got to be more entertaining than that, guys. You sucked. You sucked on today's show, okay? Sorry, just burrito.
Why did you put the 2 guys with hair in the middle and the 2 guys without hair on the outside? That doesn't.
Well, you're kind of the pits here.
I want to be paired with Big B as a Steelers fan, but whatever.
Okay, I would like you to put this all in writing and send it into HR. Okay, I'll read those after the show when I put on my HR hat. Guys, women's basketball, fading fast, but while they might well fall out of the top 16 of the rankings, maybe their ability to sell tickets will get them a first, second round site, probably with a really tough matchup as a 4. They might get a 5 that should be a 4, but wouldn't sell tickets. So they're going to send them to Manhattan as a 5. But Big B, they're still hanging around despite this fade at the end, that exactly like we saw last year without Aoka Lee.
Yeah, it's literally it's the same thing, and it's troubling, but it is what it is, man. I mean, athletics injuries are a part of it. They always have been, and they always will be. K-State's still a good team, but clearly they're just different without her. And because that Iowa State team, now granted, I mean, Iowa State's okay team. I'm not saying they're terrible, but they shouldn't be beating K-State like that. I just, they just shouldn't. They shouldn't be beating K-State like that. Bottom line is they got to get this thing figured out. The one thing I can tell you, I'm not going to say, look, you can't speak absolutes when you're talking college basketball, but if K-State loses in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, they will not be hosting. That much I can tell you for a fact. I think they've got to win it 1, maybe 2 games, but at least 1 to be able to do it. But 2 would solidify. You're right, Cole. 2 would solidify it. So whatever rut that they're in, they got to figure this thing out. They got to shoot the basketball better. I know it's better when you have Aoka Lee in there, but they got to figure out a way. They just got to figure out a way because it's kind of what you said, Fitz. They are fading fast. It's not looking good. But you know what? It only takes, college basketball is so weird is that all you have to do is get hot at the right time. And it's not 3 months that you have to be hot for. It's 3 weeks. That's it. That's all you have to be hot for is 3 weeks. So, and it's not 45 basketball games that you have to be hot for. We're talking about 6. So it can happen, but they got to make it happen because teams are dictating way too much for the ladies right now. They are dictating pace, tempo, aggressiveness. They are taking the fight to K-State, and we're not fighting back right now.
Agreed. The women's regular season is over. If you're not following that, the women's tournament's coming up this week or next week, or this week in Kansas City. I'm so confused. What week is it?
This week.
Yep. K-State. This is a bummer. In the new Big 12 brackets, half the conference plays in the first round. 4 schools get a single bye, and 4 more schools, the top 4 seeds, get a double bye. K-State somehow did not end up in the double bye. That's how hard they faded. They're the 5th seed. They will play on Thursday against the winner of UCF and BYU, the 12 and 13 seeds. And that game is at 11 a.m. So they got themselves in the morning bracket. Always good for folks covering it, but not really Cole Carmody if he wants to cover it. Still, Gills have got an opportunity to play at home. And you would think that'd be motivating. Big B's right. They can't lose without winning a game or 2 in Kansas City and expect to get that. And with that at stake, you would think they'll at least move through that BYU UCF game and move into that next slot against West Virginia, the 4 seed, a team that gave them a lot of problems last time out.
Yeah, going back to there's a lot of politics that go on in the world of college athletics. And you would hope that K-State comes out on the good side there in terms of the fan attendance, and hopefully that can get you on the 4 line. But yeah, Jerome Tang mentions it, that I'm sure he's going to preach the message when the regular season ends that anybody can get hot and go win the Big 12 tournament, right? And K-State women's doesn't have to do that. But, if you're looking at getting a 4 seed and hosting, it doesn't, you don't have to win it all. But if you want to go win March Madness, by all means, man, get hot. Like you said, Big B, 3 weeks, 3 weeks is, that's all you got to do is get hot at the right time.
Guys, here's the deal. I think that the way the bracket sets up, really, if K-State won, they were going to be the 4 seed, and if they lost, they were going to be the 5 seed. That was what we knew, and that was what was going to happen. The bracket falls actually really well for K-State, and I know that West Virginia might not be the team that K-State wants to play, but that West Virginia team away from Mountaineer Coliseum, that's what it's called, right? Is that
WVU Coliseum?
WVU Coliseum. Thank you.
Very, very catchy name.
they are not nearly as good for whatever reason. And I mean, you can say the same thing about K-State away from Bramlage, but I really think we're going to see a lot of K-State fans inside a T-Mobile Center this weekend. It seems like this fan base has really rallied around this women's program. And if they win that first game, which they should, although I'm telling you right now, don't sleep on BYU. They gave K-State a really tough game last year. K-State blew them out in Provo, but that was obviously a different team. BYU's not very good, but they've given some teams some trouble. They're going to destroy UCF. That'll probably be a game that K-State should win by double digits at least. I guess if they won by more than double digits, they would be playing really well. But they should win that game by 10 to 20 points. And then they get set with a West Virginia team where I would have really much rather, for K-State's sake, had West Virginia be the 5 because they press so much, and you get a team with tired legs as opposed to getting a team like that with fresh legs. But I don't think it's the same as playing in front of their home crowd in an obviously going to be more of a K-State environment on a Friday afternoon. I think there's going to be a lot of folks that just decide, maybe myself included, take off work and go to the game. And so, I think that this sets up nicely. And if they can get past them, I want to say they're fine. Like, I really want to say they're fine, considering a lot of people still have them on that 4 line. If they win 2 games, I want to say they're fine. But then you win that 3rd game against TCU, most likely, and you just validate that you are for sure in that group. And then you have a chance to win a Big 12 championship. So I don't think this team can get moved up to a 3 seed, but if they win the whole thing, you're going to have to beat West Virginia, TCU, and Baylor. And those are 3 really good wins that probably could bump you up to a 3 seed. So could they drop to a 5? Sure. But could they even go up? I think they could.
Yeah, very true. Oklahoma State's in the mix too as one of those buys. JC Hoyt doing an amazing job in Stillwater. Okay. Speaking of Stillwater, a baseball town. Cole, let's talk a little K-State baseball. They keep doing their thing. Dude, now they beat Nebraska. Who else they beat? Sam Houston State. They continue to play some pretty good baseball. What's ahead for K-State?
Well, I mean, I think the wins against Nebraska and Sam Houston were notable, but the more notable thing is they took the number 1 team in the country, according to D1 Baseball, to 10 innings and came literally within 2 feet away from winning that game in the bottom of the 9th on a walk-off double. They had a D. Kennedy ran through a stop sign. And even then, Seth Darter was at second base, and Nick English came up, 1 hop shot to the second baseman, who had to go full extension, gloved it, got up, made a great throw to keep the game tied in the 9th inning. LSU would go on to win. K-State just kind of ran out of pitching, but they went blow for blow with the Tigers. And in a span of, what would it be, 10 to 14, 17 days. In a span of 17 days, K-State played the number 1, the number 3, and the number 4 teams in the country. So that should just kind of tell you about where this program is right now. They're definitely trending in the right direction, and K-State baseball is on the up and up.
Well, look who arrived, Gills.
Better late than never, right?
Yeah, let's bring them in. Here we go. I can only see the top of his head, though. I'm a little concerned about that.
Guys.
There's Curits Kelly.
Hey, what's up, guys? How y'all doing?
You know what? You're just like all the women in Gills' life. He texts and they don't listen. They just blow him off. Just blow him off.
That's not good, man. You got to get it together.
Well, let's. You give me a great way to come down the home stretch of this show, Curtis. Just give me your overall thoughts on this Kansas State basketball team, where it's at right now.
Well, I think they had some struggles. They lost some games that we probably should have won, or we really didn't need to lose, if that makes sense. The quad 1 losses, I'm not too mad at. It was, some of the ones to maybe Liberty. That one was tough. And it was a couple close ones that we had that I thought that we should have got, but we dropped the ball. But to be surprising, man, I could be biased, but I'm pretty satisfied. I think with all the adversity that's been going on throughout the season and some of the problems that's been going on in the locker room, I think that the outcome puts us in not the place that we planned or the place that we wanted, but it still puts us in a place to have some postseason action, and it also puts us in a place to place a good seed as well. So I'm excited about these last few great games. I'm also excited about the tournament and just seeing if we could go on one of those six games runs that we did not too a few weeks ago. I think that we need one of those right now. We need that 6-game go right now. But what you guys think? Like, what's your feel towards how the season's been going? Because I'm kind of interested to hear what your guys' thoughts.
This has been disappointing. I mean, when the NIL and the portal, which of course didn't exist when you played at K-State, have just changed the game so much, and not just the recruiting part of it, but physically putting together that team. And you mentioned locker room issues. I do want your opinion on this. I almost look at college basketball has kind of turned like professional basketball. I mean, these guys are getting paid. Some of them are getting real money, but they're not actually professionals. You know what I mean? They don't know the other stuff that comes with being a professional. They got to learn that. It's something I imagine a lot of guys leaving college have to learn, how to take care of your business and conduct yourself like a pro in the locker room and on the court.
Well, I definitely agree.
I feel like, guys, when you look at kind of how everything has progressed, I mean, Curtis, you brought up the 6-game winning streak, and it's like we've seen this team when they play well, they can literally be the best team in the conference and one of the best teams in the country. Like, you look at all the advanced metrics, and that's where they had this team for a 6-game stretch. And like in college basketball, 6 games, that's a really substantial size. And you see the teams that they beat. And I think that's where a lot of people's, frustration is. So hard to be consistent in this league. And staying persistent and staying consistent is the difference between, not just for this team, but look what's going on with KU. I mean, beat Duke early in the season, and obviously now we see where they are. But like, I think that is been the biggest thing for a lot of people this season. Is just you can see the talent's there, and when they play together, they can beat anyone. And I mean, I know, Curtis, I know you spent a lot of time around the staff. I can only imagine as a coach how frustrating that has to be, because you feel like you have the answers, and then you look up at the final score and you're like, what? How does that happen?
Yeah. Well, I think we also learned from this season that, like, just because you put together a large quantity of talent doesn't always mean the outcome will be what you expect. I think that we set a certain high expectation for this team due to the NIL and due to some of these guys being from big schools and just the production and things they did in past schools. But we can't count out chemistry, and we can't count out being cohesive. The resilience you speak about and being tough come from guys that spend time together and kind of build a relationship where they're willing to fight for each other. They got a relationship with a coach where they want to fight for the coach, and it surpassed any amount of money or anything like that. It becomes a sense of pride and joy in wearing the jersey and representing the school that you walk through the town and get love, and you embrace people, and people open doors to you like family. Like, those type of things, it means a lot, and it's a little bit undervalued with this NIL deal. But what I'll say is, in order for a player to see that, it takes time. Like, these are guys who in past schools went to some big schools, and them spending time in that big schools, they've been around different fan bases. So in order to build a relationship with this fan base, it takes time. Now, when it comes to production is production. I mean, that's what we want, guys. Let's be real, And when we start talking about money in the production, the demand becomes higher and the expectation become higher. That's just what it is. That's professional sports. But I don't want to lose the essence of college basketball from a fan base because of NIL and because talks of money. We still have to understand that, like, it's a certain sense of love and pride for our school as well, whether whoever is coaching or playing. Now, I'll say something that may, come a little, controversial, but in, I've been a part of the Weber staff, and I was also a part of Tang staff. These are two, forget about coaches, these are two phenomenal human beings. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are geniuses in their own right. Some people won't agree, but they are geniuses. Trust me, I've been around a lot of people in life. Trust me, they are. And I say that to say that, like, at some point, everyone has to be held accountable, from our fan base, our coaches. Everyone has to be held accountable for the season. It can't just be on Coach Tang and the staff. Like, that's not, that's a cop out. You know what I mean? Like, it's been times where it was needed for the fan base to be resilient too. And, we'll see the test of time of how that resilience come into play, especially when we go play in Kansas City. But, where Manhattan is, and the essence of Manhattan, it comes from a fan base that your granddad took you to games. So why stop going? Like, I don't understand. Like your great granddad took you to these games. Like, what's the problem? Go support, wish for the best, fight, and show those newcomers and those new guys that's a part of the team that this is how the fan base and everyone supports. Now, I'll say this, and y'all may like this though. There's certain things that has to, the pieces have to come together. The puzzle has to formulate though. Let's get clear of that. But like you said, the talent that's on this team is undeniable, and the chance for this talent to maybe come together at the right time can be possible. So I don't know what y'all feel about that, but that's just my thoughts of the whole thing.
I agree. At the start of Coach Tang's radio show yesterday, post-game radio show, Wyatt Thompson introduced him as the head coach of Kansas State men's basketball, and his first words were, "God, I love hearing that. I'm just so proud to be the coach." And that was a pretty well-attended game, considering this team has 4 games in a row had lost, fallen 2 games below 500. People showed up in pretty decent numbers, Gills. I was actually really impressed with the crowd on Sunday, particularly after making that commitment last Sunday and seeing a loss.
Yeah, it's like, some fans just have that unconditional love, win or lose.
Yep.
You're going to show up. You got, there's a handful of fans in the front row, game in and game out, that they're there. And Kurt, I wanted to ask you, we ran into each other in New York at the St. John's game. And where is this team, good and bad, overall, the progression? Has this team progressed the way that you would maybe want to see? And obviously, I know you tune into a lot of games on TV. Where's the progression been in your eyes?
A lot of inconsistency, I think. I think it took a little while for the guys to buy in, to the culture. I think that, because certain pieces was a part of the team, they may have thought it would be easier than what they thought it would be. I think that's another thing. But the progression that I see is that, that 6-game run, you've seen a light switch, which was exciting to see. To see guys playing harder, they playing more together, fighting more. I think that's the progression that I saw. But again, it's inconsistent. Like the UCF game, I was disappointed in the fight. I thought the UCF gave them a lot of chances, opportunities to take over that game, and they slipped up on it. And some of that was effort. Let's just to be real. But yeah, that's what I think.
Agreed.
Yeah, what I saw, Curtis, with the team is, early on, and it seemed like it slipped. I talked about it earlier tonight. It seemed like the inconsistencies came from we didn't build it. They didn't build necessarily. We got a bunch of individual talent, but it wasn't necessarily a basketball team that got made. when they put it all together, is that we got a bunch of individual guys, but sometimes that takes longer. It's kind of what you said. There wasn't buy-in to the culture. There wasn't buy-in maybe to each other. It was, you know what? I'm this, I'm that. We're going to do this. And when you do that, it takes a while. And especially when you lose, it becomes difficult. If you win, then it's like, you know what? This works. We're really talented. But when you're losing games to teams that you shouldn't be losing games to, then it's like, okay, either we can stand up and fight or we can just quit. And it looks like they stood up and fought, but kind of like in a basketball game, you know, and I know you've been in them. Down 17, 18 points, give everything that you have to get back into the game, maybe take the lead, but then you have absolutely nothing left and you lose by 7. It kind of seems like that's how the season went for the guys. And I think some of it was because, not some of it, I think a lot of it was because at the beginning of the season, it just wasn't a basketball team yet.
I definitely agree. I mean, you hit it on the nail. Like, the individual talent was definitely there. Like, we see sparks from multiple guys. But, you know, I think that also has a lot to do with how, you know, retention and developing guys. You know, I think that when you put a group of guys that's newcomers like that, then sometimes it'll work, but it has to be the right newcomers. You got to get all the pieces connected right. And if you don't, you know, it could be a leak in a boat. But if you retain guys and you get guys, you know, that already bought in, then those guys could bring them along. And I think that's another thing we was looking for. Like, we still trying to decide who's the leader on this team and who's the alpha on the team. You know, we see some sparks from Coleman. We seen Doug, you know what I mean, show some sparks. But it's special leadership that's needed in order to reach championship caliber. And I didn't really see that this year. So
I think do all great teams have not just an alpha in the locker room, but a guy that can back it up on the court too?
Yeah, I think all great teams have. I think all great teams have like two particular things, that they have the alpha and the leader, but then they have the locker room guy. I think the alpha and leader can be the locker room guy, but for the most part, it usually be two different individuals. And the alpha and the leader, of course, does the leading alpha by example or by just being the best player and just, you know, exploding for games. Like, that shows some alpha in you. But it's also that locker room guy that kind of keep the pieces together. I think this year, just by what I see, you know, I'm not in the locker room, but David is probably that. You know what I mean? Like, he's a guy that shows what Tang culture can be if it develops and grows through time and being a part of the culture. You know, he comes out every night and gives everything 100%. You know what I mean? Whatever's going on with injury, anything, he's there 100%. So I think yes, you know, it's two guys that's needed. And what would you guys say? Who would you guys say is the alpha and leader of the team? Like, what's your perspective about that?
I'd probably go with Doug McDaniel on the court, which has kind of been, with his personality, I think that's been a little uneven, because when he's really locked in and plays like an alpha, that was a big key to that 6-game winning streak. He was really good and took pressure off of everyone else. But then he kind of fades away for a while and isn't as crisp, and I think the team suffers for it.
And two, I think I'll add to that too. You could make an argument for Coleman Hawkins. I mean, because as soon as Coleman Hawkins goes out, we see, you know, the drop off. And so I think it's kind of, you know, Brien and I talk about this all the time with Doug and Coleman. When those two guys are right, the rest of the team follows. Like, we're seeing David Gasson have so much success because it just jumps off the page now. And he was having this success when Doug and Coleman Hawkins were playing very successful. But now that Coleman Hawkins is out, and it's really David. And so, I I mean, you could make an argument that maybe there's no singular alpha, but when Doug McDaniel and Coleman Hawkins were playing good, then that those were the two guys. Which, guys, I go back to this: like, if you're gonna have any kind of optimism for the rest of the season, if Coleman Hawkins can come back, which we don't know if that's gonna happen or not, but if Coleman Hawkins can come back and you have a somewhat healthy Coleman Hawkins and you have a Doug McDaniel who continues to play the way he does, and now David Gasson playing like this, there's no reason that this can't be a similar team to the type of team that won 6 games in a row. And I know people might not, want to hear that right now, but that's just the reality of the situation, is that when those guys are clicking, they're just good. They just are.
Kurt,
they are really good.
I'm curious, man. In that Elite Eight season, was it as simple as Marquise and Keontae in the locker room and on the court, or was there one maybe unsung hero that maybe fans didn't appreciate enough, just in terms of being that alpha or being that leader?
Good question. I think it's both. Like Keontae was just the alpha with him playing, but he wasn't the most vocal. But the way he played, just like I laugh because it's like the way he played, it was clear. Like, yo, he's a big dog. Like, you don't got to say nothing to him. Let him rock, and he's gonna bring us home. But Marquise was probably the leader. I think Marquise did a lot by example. He was always in the gym. He always worked hard. He showed young guys like Cam, Dorian, and some of the young guys coming up. They seen how, like, oh, this is hard work, which kind of helped them to grow. And we also had like guys that like just did the little things. Like Ishmael was like phenomenal in the locker room. He was a guy that kept everything smooth and calm, and he never like got too rocky or always brung guys together. Always did the right thing. Desi, we had multiple guys that you could say is the leader, but and that led. But I would say that Marquise and Keontae was just out of his world. But those other guys had a big part of the way the culture was built at that time, and leading to us having a good foundation to win tough games. Desi's a dog, man. He was tough. Bebe was a good guy. Like, he didn't argue, complain about playing minutes. This is a guy that stood up every time someone scored. Shook everyone's hand, like got water if he needed. He'll grab water out of the trainer's hands and hand it to guys. Like, those pieces too is so much important because it makes the leaders, enjoy leading as well. So yeah.
Well, it's about time to wrap this up, but I do want to ask you, because you've got a really good perspective on this. We spent a lot of time in this show talking about David Gasson, the progress he's made. As someone who coached him when he first arrived and has watched him develop, how incredible has this been for him to come in from Virginia Tech as a lightly used guy for the Hokies that has evolved into, and he's made himself an essential piece of this program?
It's phenomenal, man. I think that when I started coaching and I got into coaching, I dreamed of days like this. And, it's funny to say that, but, it's the truth. To see a guy that when he came in was his first year, had some confident issues, trying to build his confidence back. And to see where he is now is, it's phenomenal. It warms my heart every time I see him, throw the eagle up and he smiles and he's able to perform out there and do the best that he can. But I think the most interesting thing is that he worked. He worked, man. He worked really hard. He put a lot of time in. And he didn't just work, physically. He did it spiritually. He did it mentally. He grew as a young man. I think all those things is a testament of not only the program, but of what it takes to be a significant piece on a championship caliber team. He was a big part of that Elite Eight run. He's just a phenomenal glue guy, man. I love David, man. I don't know what you guys think about him or what the fans think, but he deserves on senior night, everybody got to come out to see him. I don't care what's going on. They got to come out to see him. They got to come out to show him love and give him a standing ovation. Because to me, he's one of the K-State legends. You know, he's been at it in this era, of the Tang era. He's the start of it, and he's one of the last. He's one of the last. Is he the last original?
Taj, just him and Taj. Yeah.
Taj, man, him and Taj. Look, my man Taj. Wow, like, you know, time flies to think about that, but yeah, he's one of the last originals.
Yep.
I appreciate you asking that, Tim, man. That means a lot, man, because I love that boy, man.
Yeah, he's a great young man, and what a very symbol of how to play college basketball. Just bust your ass, just give it all.
Absolutely.
So, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Insiders. We appreciate Curits Kelly popping in. Of course, K-State returns to action on Wednesday night at Cincinnati at the 4:30, 5:30. What? It's the weird Fifth Third arena. The Fifth Third arena. I have no idea. I think they just put some words together, and that sounds cool. The Fifth Third. But that game's at Gil 6 p.m. on Wednesday, and of course, it's on the K-State Sports Network, which is also known as ESPN Plus, because that's where all the games have been recently. Thanks, everyone, for stopping in. Kurt, thank you very much.
Much love, guys. Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching the K-State Insight.